Hello, BookTube. Well, it's February already. January has come and gone, and since we're at the beginning of the month, that on BookTube means it's time for a TBR. On this channel, I do it a little differently. I do a TBR BY, a to be read by you, because most of the books that I'll be reading in the month of February are not out yet, and that doesn't help you much. So I thought I'd make you 10 uh, strong recommendations of books that are coming out in February, either soon or they might be out already, or they'll be out sometime during the month. Uh, that if they're in your subject matter and they seem like they interest you, I can assure you that they are good. We'll start with a murder mystery. This is a historical murder mystery by Philip Dupuy. This is The English Agent, the second in his murder mystery starring Christopher Marlowe. It's a really good series. I'm very happy with both the books. So I highly recommend it, especially if Marlowe's life opens itself up to the ministrations of fiction, because it has so many tantalizing hints that stuff we will never know. So the author takes full advantage of that. The next one is nonfiction. It's a historical investigation of a key event. It's The Blood of Emmett Till by Timothy Tyson, and it's his investigation of the notorious murder of a boy in the South that sparked the civil rights movement in America. It was as most people might not know Emmett Till's name, but they might know, if they know it, they might know that from Rosa Parks, because Rosa Parks said in interview after interview that she was thinking of Emmett Till when she made her classic gesture of defiance on a bus. This author goes back to all the sources and to try to figure out exactly what happened over the course of those 2 days, and moves forward to analyze the weight of the whole thing. I was stunned by this book. I don't know what I was expecting going in, but I wasn't expecting it to have such visceral power. Here at the beginning of February. It is, so only 1 month in. It's by far the best work of nonfiction that I've read so far in 2017. I highly recommend it if the subject is of any interest to you at all. And even if it isn't, it's one of those nonfiction books that will grab you anyway. Then the next one, let's see here, is also somber. It's something we've seen on this channel before. It's This Close to Happy by Daphne Merkin. It's a memoir of hers about clinical depression, her own and other people's, and it's really, really good. It's scathing. It's at times very uncomfortable reading, not just for the commentary that it makes on the complacency of American society and the American medical institution, but also because she's unsparing of herself. It's it's an amazing memoir, an amazing performance. And then the next one will dispense with somber for the next one, to put it mildly. This is a techno thriller. Let's see here. It's by Mark Greaney. It's called Gunmetal Gray, and it is a gray man novel. The latest in a series of books of his, a fantastic central action hero character, who's persona non grata with the intelligence world, and deadly, of course, and super smart. And Gunmetal Gray is, I think it's going to come out in hardcover in February, and I'm hoping, now that I've caught up on the Gray Man novels, this was the first one that I read, and I also read this author's continuation of Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan novels, and those two things made me think, just, he really knows how to tell a story. He really does, especially action-oriented. The thing never lets up, and that made me hope that sales and public acknowledgement will get him a slightly bigger career. I'd like it if he took over as our leader in action-oriented techno thrillers. I've scarcely read them done better. So I highly recommend Gunmetal Gray. Then we move on to a work of natural history that I was totally unsuccessful in getting any editor to pay me to review. I will still review it because it is a joy. And I can sort of understand why they weren't inclined. It's Cannibalism by Bill Shutt. the subtitle being a perfectly natural history, and it's his account of cannibalism in the natural world, from the simplest organisms all the way up to humans, and it's wonderful not only for the conclusions that you rapidly start coming to the further along you go in the book, the foremost of which is that cannibalism is completely common, that it is in fact bedrock of living things, which, when you think about it, makes a kind of sense, right? I mean, most species of primitive life, when they reproduce in giant clouds of young, not just one carefully selected little fetus that's going to grow up to have a brain as powerful as a Cray supercomputer. They reproduce clouds of eggs, or a row, or little ones, and those things are bursting with protein and completely defenseless. Not only is that why the book is wonderful, because it opens your eyes to a lot, but also it's wonderful because the author is hilarious. he's genuinely funny on almost every page. He seems to know the uphill battle that he's fighting to get anybody to read a book about cannibalism, and it works. It's the perfect approach to take. Then the next one is a serious work of history. I think a lot of these we've seen on this channel before. I just wanted to make sure that, in addition to seeing them in a mail haul, maybe when I knew nothing about them, that I wanted to make sure that I was telling you that at least that these 10 were really good, and then I will try to stop neglecting Goodreads in the course of the month to fill you in on all the others. But in the meantime, this is a serious work of history that I went into it because it's a subject of deep fascination for me, and it blew me away. It's The House of Truth, by Brad Snyder, and it is about Washington salon in the early part of the 20th century. Washington D.C. That's when salons and informal gatherings and houses all along K Street, ruled over by usually absentee diplomat husbands and incredibly powerful matrons. This era is when the Washington society matron came into her own as a force, not only in society but also in politics, and their names were legendary, and the stories are legendary. And this author tells the story of one such salon, but really it's connected to a whole bunch of others, and the effects that it had on the social and liberal mind frame of America of the day. He never overstates his case. He makes sure to remember to include personalities, because these things were entirely built on personalities, and he makes a really good book out of the whole thing. It manages to capture the importance of the phenomenon in a way that's usually only hinted at, and usually sardonically. But it's a tough sell. I know. It's a big book. It's heavy. It's expensive. And it's also abstruse. I mean, it doesn't deal specifically with the politics of the age of Wilson and Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., and it doesn't deal specifically with the art either. It's it's rarefied. However, if I'm making recommendations, and if you're wondering, well, if given all you've just said, who could you possibly give it to? If you know someone who works in Washington, in politics in Washington, and who is interested in that world, not just works there because they've just got out of school, but is interested in that world, if you know someone like that, they should read this. I also think that every member of Congress should read it, just because it grounds them in their own profession. It shows the world of complexity that they're walking over, and I think too few of them know that. But anyway, I highly recommend it. As a work of history, I highly recommend it. And then next we'll go on to fantasy. This is Blood Upon the Sand by Bradley Beaulieu. This is the second book in his, and I don't know how anybody ever says it. I'm going to read it. I'm going to try and read it slowly, otherwise I'll say it wrong. I don't know why anyone would ever give a series a title like this. This is the second book in the Song of the Shattered Sands. Not the Saturn Shands. The Song of the Shattered Sands. But no matter what the tongue twister of the book series, the books themselves are wonderful. They are a very much Arabian Nights take on the epic fantasy in a way that's seldom done. I know of only two other examples myself. And it's refreshingly complex. There are all sorts of plates spinning. In the first book, that was what amazed me when I read the first book, and second book even more so. Just, you cannot possibly read the second book without reading the first one. But if you have read it, I can tell you, the second book is even better. And the two are worth getting if you want to do it. Try and go up to your counter at your local bookstore and try to ask for the Song of the Shattered Sands. Then we have fiction. I think we've seen it on this channel before. It was wonderful. It's Universal Harvester by John Darnielle, the author of Wolf in White Van. This one takes place in Iowa and deals with mysterious videotapes, but it quickly expands beyond that to mysterious all sorts of other things. It's a short book, and it's tremendously good. This guy has just an amazing knack for storytelling, and I highly recommend it. I also highly recommend Wolf in White Van. I think I mentioned that on this channel before, but it's worth repeating. It's a heck of a book. We have another novel. Next one. This is big and ambitious. It's one of the best things I've ever had by this author. It's uncomfortable reading. It strikes at the heart of the American experience. It's a Book of American Martyrs by Joyce Carol Oates. This is tremendous. It's her abortion novel. In a big, gigantic, multi-populated novel or narrative that is split along the lines of a man who kills an abortion doctor and the abortion doctor and his family, and that follows twin narratives but exfoliates out from there. And of course, because it's a Joyce Carol Oates novel, nothing in it is simple. Despite that binary setup, nothing in the book is simple. It's incredibly thought-provoking and unsettling, and also extremely well written. I don't know how the woman does it. She never stops writing. I guess that's how she does it. But every once in a while, she'll produce a book that's tremendous, and this is one of them. So I highly recommend it. It's not a small undertaking, but it's well worth it. And then the last book that I'll recommend for your February TBR BY is a biography, and it's one I've mentioned on this channel before. It's tremendous, just tremendous. It's Megan Marshall's biography of the great poet Elizabeth Bishop, A Miracle for Breakfast. And like Daphne Merkin's book, it pulls no punches. This was at times an ugly story, and she tells it just beautifully. I've read everything there is to read about Elizabeth Bishop. I've never read a biography this good. Never read, really, even often throughout the book, I've never read impressions of her poetry that were this good, which is, as I've mentioned on this channel before, that is the weak spot. That is the kryptonite of literary biographies, is that no matter how good they are, they often fail because it's a little bit unfair to expect a really good biographer to also be a really good literary critic. And when you're writing a biography of an artist, a writer, a poet, you kind of have to be for the thing to work really well. It's all right if it doesn't. No one's really expecting you. If you're writing, a 5-volume biography of Henry James, no one was really expecting you to not only master all of that biographical detail, but also to be a sensitive critic of the work. In one hand, it's unreasonable to expect that. On the other hand, it's reasonable to expect it because you assume that it's the fascination with the work that drew you to the life in the first place. I don't know how to split the difference, but I always view it as an added bonus, and it's an added bonus with this book that Megan Marshall also is a very good reader of the poetry, which is not easy poetry. So, but also the biography part is done really well. So if you see this on a bookstore front table and you are interested in Elizabeth Bishop or new poetry or new biography, I highly recommend it. That's what I want for this whole TBR BY, is for you, if you see these covers and think, oh, that's a subject matter on which I am generally interested, I wonder if this particular book is any good, you at least have my say-so that it is. You have at least one vote in favor. And that's it. That's our February TBR BY for now, and I'll see you soon, Book 2. Thank you.